All right, let's jump right into this absolutely incredible story. It's a tale of courage, of really high-stakes strategy, and it all hinges on one pivotal moment where a queen risked literally everything. We're going to break down how one woman navigated a lethal political landscape where a single gesture meant the difference between life and death. I mean, really think about that for a second. This wasn't some hypothetical question for Queen Esther. This was her reality. Her people were facing total annihilation, and the only one who could possibly do anything about it was her. But the price for even trying? Immediate execution. So to really get the sheer guts this took, we first have to understand the terrifying law of the Persian court. And this wasn't just, a matter of royal etiquette. This was an ironclad rule, and the penalty for breaking it was the ultimate one. And there it is, right there in black and white. It doesn't matter if you're a servant or the queen herself. If you approach the king uninvited, the default sentence is death. The only way out, the single solitary exception, is if the king, in that moment, decides to show you mercy by holding out his golden scepter.
And this just lays it all out, doesn't it? There's no middle ground here. No trial, no appeal. It's a simple binary outcome, life or death. And it's based entirely on the king's mood in that one single moment. This is the huge gamble Esther is about to take.
So knowing these insane stakes, Esther doesn't just rush in. No, her approach is incredibly deliberate. It's steeped in preparation, and it's backed by this deep resolve. This was absolutely a calculated risk, not some desperate last-minute plea. This timeline, wow, it just shows you how committed she was. She spends 3 full days fasting and in spiritual preparation, not alone, but with her whole community. This shows us her courage isn't just some emotional impulse. It's fortified by faith, by a clear purpose, and only then, only after all that, does she finally act.
Can you just imagine that moment? After 3 days of getting ready, she puts on her royal robes, walks into that inner court, and just stands there. She's visible to the king, but she can't speak. Everything, her own life, the future of her entire people, is hanging in the balance, resting on a single glance from one very powerful man.
And this brings us to it. The moment the entire story just pivots. All the tension, all the risk, it all comes down to this one object and the king's decision on whether or not to use it. This one simple phrase, it changes everything. When the king sees her, he's not angry. He isn't offended that she broke protocol. Instead, she finds favor. The text tells us he immediately held out the golden scepter. You can just feel the tension break. In an instant, the law of death is completely overcome by an act of personal grace.
Okay, so you gotta understand, the scepter is so much more than just a fancy royal staff. It's the physical embodiment of the king's power to place his own personal mercy above his own rigid, impersonal law. To have that scepter extended to you, well, it was to be granted life itself.
And scholars see so much depth in this one moment. Some see the scepter pretty straightforwardly, as a symbol of royal grace. Others see it in much more theological terms, like a sign of divine providence stepping in and bending the rules of an empire to save a people. And some see it as this beautiful picture of the tension between strict, unbending justice and life-giving grace.
So, okay, her life is safe. You'd think she'd just pour out her request right then and there, right? But she doesn't. And this is where her raw courage gives way to a truly brilliant and patient strategy.
And this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? She has the king's full, undivided attention. He's literally offered her up to half his kingdom. So why the delay? Well, this is where Esther pivots from being a courageous risk-taker to an absolute master strategist.
I mean, just look at this plan. She is not making this up as she goes. She uses her newfound favor not to make her big request, but to get a private audience with both the king and her people's #1 enemy, Haman. Then she delays again. She invites them to a second banquet, letting all that tension and anticipation build to the absolute perfect moment.
And I love this insight from the scholar John Levinson because it just nails it. Esther's restraint isn't hesitation, it's a sign of profound wisdom, of discernment. She gets that courage is what gets you in the door, but it's strategy that wins the war. She is carefully, patiently creating the perfect conditions for her big reveal to have the maximum possible impact.
So, when we pull back and look at this incredible moment, what are the timeless lessons here? Well, it's this powerful combination of her own personal character and maybe some unseen forces at work too. Honestly, this story is just a masterclass. It shows that courage means acting despite your fear. But it also teaches that real wisdom means knowing when to act. It suggests that faith and planning aren't opposites, they can work hand in hand. And maybe most powerfully, it shows that one single moment of personal mercy can shatter even the most inflexible laws.
So in the end, this isn't just a story about one event. It's really about the complete transformation of a person. Esther starts out as this hesitant, maybe even frightened young queen, and becomes this bold, wise leader who steps up and saves her people.
And all of this leaves us with a really challenging question for our own lives, doesn't it? Esther's story perfectly balances raw courage with incredible patience. So, in our own critical moments, how do we find that same balance? How do we figure out when it's time for a bold move and when it's time for a patient, strategic wait? That's a timeless challenge for all of us.